Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. AIM Forms. My name is Vijay and Varun on the Forms team. Let's take a look at the agenda here real quick. So we're going to go over an overview of digital enrollment and communication using APIs. We'll cover our headless forms feature and the related APIs, as well as the communication APIs for customer communications. And then that will be followed by a demo from Varun on the headless forms API, as well as a demo from Vijay on communications APIs. First, let's get to know the speakers. My name is Arun. I'm a principal product manager in the AIM Forms team here at Adobe.
Myself Vijay, and I'm a senior computer scientist in AEM Forms team.
Everyone, I am Varun and I am a senior computer scientist at Adobe working in the Forms team.
Awesome. Let's get started. So the first feature that we want to highlight here is our customer communications feature, which is going GA in December. It does come with both the use cases addressed, both your on-demand communications for welcome kits, business correspondence, as well as your scheduled communications and batch statements like bills, anything that you need to send out weekly or monthly in bulk. We will see how the APIs that we are making available can be used to quickly orchestrate customer communications. The other feature that we'll highlight, and this is at concept stage, so stay tuned for future roadmap dates for this one. But what we'll share is how customers can use a channel agnostic representation of a form, so call it headless delivery of a form, and control its rendition for a specific channel very easily using the JSON format that is received. They can develop a front-end app like a single page app or a mobile app without requiring any AM expertise. So this is another exciting area that we will share more details on. To highlight these features, we'll use a demo story here. So we'll use the weekend theme. At weekend, there's a team of people who are in charge of digital enrollment and modernization of enrollment. We have Camila, who is the forms practitioner, then George, who's the front-end developer, and also John, who's a forms developer. And not to miss Aya, who is the end customer and is a weekend adventure enthusiast. She's looking to sign up for the weekend club and also sign up for some activities that interest her. So let's look at step one, right? So first, what you'll see is Camila, who's the forms practitioner, use the familiar adaptive forms editor in AEM Forms to create and author a form. But what's interesting is she can also now save it as a headless representation in JSON format. And with that headless representation, George, who is the front-end developer, can actually fetch that form model in JSON form and use a React component to render that. So he's completely decoupled from requiring any kind of AEM expertise to do that, and he can easily build front-end applications using this method that contain forms or any kind of data capturing experiences for customers. And he can add it to, let's say, a single page app or any kind of a React based application or a mobile app. And you'll see that in the demo. Next, of course, once the form has been published, you of course have Aya navigate to the website, to the weekend website. She fills up that form, signs up for the weekend club, as well as some activities like biking or hiking, and then she submits the form and is now a member. What's you know uh, sets us apart as a product, AM Forms, is it's not just data capture, right? It's not just the initial forms and enrollment. We continue our engagement with the customer through our communications feature, which means you can actually stay engaged with the customer by sending them communications like monthly statements, account updates. In this case, you'll see how John, who's the developer, can use a pre-built template and merge data for each customer and send them communications that include a summary of activities they have been doing. Like in case, where all did Aya go biking or hiking, and how much time she spent doing those activities, how much adventure points she has earned, right? And then what is her credit balance with weekend. Such a statement can be easily orchestrated and built and sent out using our communication APIs. With that, I'll hand it over to Varun, who is going to go over the headless forms demo.
Thanks, Arun, for the quick introduction. So before continuing forward with the APIs and why these APIs are important, let's discuss a little bit about our developers and how they are working currently. So George is a seasoned front-end developer who can create beautiful web applications or mobile applications using front-end technologies like React, JavaScript, or any other uh, mobile platforms as well. While Camilla
So,
designs
Varun,
those data cap.
Varun, real
Just
quick, there's some background noise. If you can speak a little louder.
okay. So, so sorry for that. So while George creates those beautiful front-end applications, Camilla defines the data capture experiences that have been uh, finalized by the finalized with the backend team, and together they publish those forms or applications to their end users. Now this works correctly for one or two forms, but when they have to work at scale, they have to communicate multiple times and do multiple iterations. But with AEM forms, Camilla can create those data capture experience, can define those experience separately using AEM forms editor, and using the APIs published that APIs that will be published in AEM, she can publish a JSON representation which is channel agnostic, doesn't contain any JavaScript or HTML, and effectively enables multi-channel validation. The form definition also contains the APIs using which the form data can be submitted, validated, and pre-filled for the end user. So all these APIs give George more control over, without knowing anything about AEM, more control over data, and he can actually create beautiful applications using it. So we'll see that in a live demo, how this enables George and Camilla work a little faster.
Let me stop sharing.
Yes.
There you go.
Let me know when my screen is visible.
We can see your screen, Varun.
Yes. So as mentioned, George is a seasoned developer, a front-end developer who has created this website over a period of 2 or 3 days. So he has created all those React components and defined all those form components as well that will be used inside the uh, product, inside their application. He has done that over a couple of days, but the data capture experience is not yet defined. So uh, Camilla, on the other hand, is working parallelly in AEM since she is an expert. Has some expertise in AEM, so she creates data models, and then using those data models and the drag-drop interface of AEM, she creates these data. She defines these experiences for their end users. Now, when she publishes them using APIs, she can publish a list of forms that have been. George can discover a list of forms that have been published. Along with that, the JSON representation of each of the forms. So let's see how those APIs. So first, George will try forms that have been published. So he'll receive a bunch of URLs representing the JSON representation of the form. So let's take a look at what the JSON representation looks like. And so a JSON representation contains all the form fields, their constraints and rules that have been defined within the form. And these rules are not included as JavaScript, but they are present inside and they work within any React frontend as well. So, and there are certain uh, there are certain URLs, the APIs, which specifies how the data has to be posted to AEM or how the data has to be retrieved from the AEM. So all these things are part of a form definition, including form, the date constraints, the validation constraints, and everything. And George, as a seasoned developer, just has created an adaptive form component which takes this URL. So I'll show this component for a while, and then I'll show you how it works in the browser. So he creates a component which takes a form URL, fetches it, and then converts it, parses the JSON, creates a configuration out of it, and renders component present in the JSON definition. So let's see how that works. So the URL that George has received, he just puts the URLs in his component that he has created, and if you look at the form gets rendered, and now Aya, who is uh, who is the customer, she can go and fill in the data, can submit the data as well. And in this example, we have shown that an ID is generated, which ID can be used in the backend to see that the data has been actually uh, received in AEM, and this data can be pre-filled using APIs that the form had. So in the case of the APIs that the form definition contains, there was a API for the fetching the form data, and you can see that the data has been retrieved from the AEM instances. The second, so similarly, we can show you the second form that was received. It's as simple as changing the URL for the other form. So George has received two forms, so we'll just copy paste the URL of the second form to see if all the validations that were defined in that specific form are working correctly or not. And just go back to that particular form, and we'll just try to fill up them, and all the validations, all the uh, constraints that were defined in the form data model are being honored here. Any custom rules, any dynamic nature of the form is also uh, provided in the form definition, and George can use that definition to create these experiences as well. So that's all from me. I'll stop sharing here. So that's all for demo, and this shows how George and Camilla can work in parallel and create these beautiful applications and publish a little faster.
Thank you, Varun. So I think what we just saw is how George, without requiring any AM expertise, can use the Headless Forms APIs to orchestrate and create digital enrollment experiences for multiple channels using a React app or any other front-end frameworks. So the beauty here is we are not just going to provide data capture experience. It's the Headless Forms definition will also include provisions for dynamicity like rules, as Varun mentioned, right? So George has now created the experience, the enrollment experience. Aya is going to fill up that form, sign up for Weekend Club, and as well as some activities. Now it's time to engage with Aya and send her some communications, right, to customer. So Vijay is now going to go over a demo where John can easily build these communications using APIs. Over to you, Vijay.
Yeah. Can you see my can you see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with the communication API. Thanks, Arun. So the communication API follows the Open API specification, and it currently two type of authentication, which is token-based and basic authentication. Production, it is recommended to use token-based authentication, and there is a public document available to retrieve the process of token and using it in the API. So let's now see John, a forms developer persona, can generate a statement like a welcome kit or a monthly statement using these APIs. If we most of the use cases, there are in general there are two use cases. So APIs where the statements are generated on demand, like sending in a welcome kit whenever the user subscribe or maybe address change event. And another part is the so where batch mode is more of the statements generating in high volume on a scheduled basis, say generate a monthly statements or weekly or yearly statements. So you to use batch mode, there is some pre-requesting that is Azure storage account. So customer need to provision Azure storage account, and it's expected the data is available in that storage account, and the final results will be again stored back to the same storage account. And the very high level flow of the batch will be, first the customer need to create the cloud configuration, and then they need to create a batch data source configuration, and then upload the template which was provided by the designer. Now let's see this in action look like. So the synchronous APIs are very straightforward. You just need to read and the data, and just so the template can be an absolute URL, or it can be a relay. So the absolute will be in case of the HTTP URL. So we have already seen the statement. So this is more of a synchronous where we generate statements on demand, and it takes a request, a data, and template. Now let's look at how batch works. So as I mentioned, batch we need a storage account, and I have already provisioned an Azure storage account and placed the customer details in this, or weekend customer details in this records folder. You can see there are two files. One is related to Aya and one is related to Jeff. And now let's try to create a monthly statement for these records. So the first step which I have mentioned was to configure the cloud configuration. So this is the AEM cloud configuration for Azure, where we have specified the account name and the account. And the next comes the where we specify which folders to be used or which containers to be used. So in general, Azure storage have multiple containers. So here, for example, I have said batch demo container. In that, there is a records folder where you can find the data XMLs. And similarly, we can specify where the output need to be stored. So that's set again to the same container, but with the different folders name statements. And the final step before using the API is to upload the template. So I have already uploaded the statement.xtp into AEM Forms console. So Synchronous API, we can use the batch APIs. So they are completely based on, so we can directly use it from the Postman or curl. I will be demonstrating using CLI. Mostly this will be a part of AIO CLI plugin after the GA of communication APIs. So let me start with the help. The batch are categorized into two sections. One is configurations, where you need to create a batch configurations, creating a configuration, reading, updating, and deleting. And another is executions. So the execution is where you start the job and you track the job status. So I have already configured to use my AEM setup. Let's try to list all the jobs available in the setup. So I say config list. So in terms of get API using the config path, and the command is list. You can see there is a one already configuration exists, and there is with config. So let's dig into that and see what does actually configuration means. Includes and a data source location, which was we have previously seen. It is a full absolute path of the AEM. And this is the interesting part where we need to specify the output. So currently we support both output formats, that is to generate a PDF or to generate a printed form documents. So printed documents are like PostScript, PCL. So in case of print, we need to specify more details like which kind of render type you want to use. So here I have specified HP PCL, which is print control language. And finally, which we need to use for merging the data with. So this is the configuration looks like. Let's create a configuration with this. And I just provide the JSON here. The batch is created successfully. Let's list it out and see whether it is showing in the list. So we can see the weekend job now. Now let's start a job. So to start a job, we need to use the execution API. Provide the job name. So command is start and say the weekend job, the name of the job. What it does is, so it starts a job in the background and provides us with the identifier through which we can see the status of the job status. Or we can simply say, list me all the executions which has been done. If I say list me all the execution, as we can see, there are a few more executions has occurred in this. Most of them are in success state, and the last one is in processing, which is weekend job. Now, this is more of very high level status that it is processing. But if we need more, what exactly does it is doing, then we can say, get me the status of particular job, and this is and the execution. So this will provide us more details. For example, in the Azure storage, there are two records, right? So, and we have specified to generate two output types. One is PDF and print of type PCL. There are two work in progress as of now. So the both for both PDF and print. So yeah, I think it's executed. So one, it's stored in the statement location as destination location. And if you can see here, there are two folders, one with name PDF and PCL. This is because we have said to generate an output type like PDF and PCL. So if we go inside, then we can see a success folder. In case there are any issues in the data or template or any other issues, then it will be showing a failure folder where it contains the more details of the failure. But since the job is success, it's everything is in success folder. As we can see, there are two PDFs generated. Let's see the IF statement, how does the end PDF look like. So as we can see, the data has been, we are the blue color content like name and the activities she has been included along with this table is coming as a part of data, and remaining things like the thank you for being weekend member and some static content and some images like header, this one logo of weekend content coming from the template. So here the statement, and similarly we have the statement. We also have the printed format for the PCL. That's it from the demo. Back to you, Arun.
Thank you, Vijay. So you just saw how George and John and Camila as a team at Weekend are able to orchestrate an end-to-end digital enrollment journey using APIs. So the key takeaways with these two features and APIs, we unlock an API-first approach to orchestrating digital enrollment. We allow omni-channel delivery of forms using headless APIs and its headless representation. And then, of course, empower the front-end developer. They don't have to know AEM coding to build front-end apps that have digital experiences for enrollment. And then finally, we enable complete digital enrollment using communication APIs. So not just stop at the initial data capture and enrollment, but continue engaging with the customer using communication services and APIs. That's it for this session. If you have any questions, please put them on the chat. So the recording for this session will be available in a couple of weeks. If you want to share it with the rest of your team, please do so. And thanks again for joining.